plane flies low overhead. The skies are smoky over the city of Kokura, a product of fire bombings that had devastated the city of Yahara the night before. Piloting the plane are two Americans, Major Charles W. Sweeney and First Lieutenant Charles Donald Albury. Their mission? To drop a nuclear bomb on the city of Kokura. The plane circles over its target 3 times, searching for an opening in the smoke and clouds to establish visibility. Just 3 miles away from their main target is Tetsuya Fujita, a 25-year-old physics professor. As the air raid sirens sound, he leads his students to an underground air raid shelter. Like many in Kokura that day, he'd look up in the sky as he made his way to the shelter, watching and listening for any sign of enemy aircraft, only for the sound of the plane's engine to gradually fade into the distance. With the smoke and clouds over Kokura too thick, the B-29 bomber known as the Boxcar, carrying the Fat Man atomic bomb, would divert and head for its second target, the city of Nagasaki. As the plane approached the city of nearly 300,000 people, it found a break in the clouds, and with it, clear visibility of its target in the city center. With the press of a single button, the bomb would drop from the bottom of the plane. 47 seconds later, Armageddon. Around 40,000 people are instantly killed. An entire city is flattened in mere seconds. The world is changed forever. The damage in Nagasaki and nearby Hiroshima is unlike anything the world had seen before. Roughly a month after the bombings, Tetsuya Fujita was invited to tour the damage as part of a team of researchers. Their job? To survey the damage patterns and find out where and at what altitude the bombs detonated at. What fascinated Fujita most about the devastation, however, was the damage pattern of the downed trees beneath the blast. The trees immediately below the blast site were left upright, while those surrounding the blast in all directions were toppled. He visualized how the air would have acted to yield this result, a blast of wind falling immediately downwards, hitting the ground and then fanning out. While not meteorological in nature, it was this studying of wind and damage patterns that would spark an interest within the young Fujita, that would lead him into a world of researching nature's most extreme forces, tornadoes. In 1946, Fujita began his research in thunderstorms and downdrafts, his first explorations into the world of meteorology. In September 1948, he surveyed his first stretch of tornado damage, an experience that only served to further solidify his obsession with the phenomena. Around this time, Fujita became familiar with the work of Dr. Horace Byers, a meteorologist at the University of Chicago. He had first been introduced to Byers' work after a colleague found one of his papers in the trash and gave it to Fujita. Fujita was so enthralled by the paper's contents that he immediately contacted Byers, sparking a lifelong friendship. A friendship that by 1953 had led Tetsuya Fujita to pursue his American dream, boarding a plane across the Pacific, bound for the United States. As the plane arrived on America's west coast, amidst the fear, chaos, and uncertainty, Fujita's mind was filled with visions of what his future life would entail. In front of him was a lifetime of discovery, decades of innovation and research that would reveal some of Mother Nature's most closely kept secrets. His contributions to the knowledge of tornadoes, downbursts, microbursts, hurricanes, and typhoons would be so grand that he would shape much of the modern field of meteorology as we know it, to the point that his name would become synonymous with nature's power, earning himself the moniker of Mr. Tornado, and a legacy that would last for eternity. Shortly after landing on the west coast, Fujita made his way inland. Soon, he found himself in bustling Chicago. The city of the big shoulders was booming like much of America in the post-war economy. In stark contrast to the shells that remained of much of Japan's urban areas, Fujita found along the shores of Lake Michigan a sprawling metropolis. Chaotic, hectic, and, for a man who could barely speak English, likely very overwhelming.
Fujita found some reprieve from the chaos of the city at the University of Chicago. At this point, the university had developed a reputation as one of America's finest, significantly influencing thought in a multitude of fields from economics to nuclear physics. With such a rich academic and intellectual environment around him, Fujita soon flourished, though not without some difficulties. As stated previously, his English was pretty shaky, and the university gave him very little assistance in starting his new life. According to him, all they gave him was a pencil and a desk. Everything else he had to figure out by himself. However, he soon immersed himself in his work and, eager to impress Horace Byers, began to fixate on one of the Midwest's most elusive and intense phenomena.
Fujita was always fascinated by the extreme. From the time he researched the effects of the nuclear bombings, the sheer power of natural forces always gripped him. It's no wonder tornadoes soon became his focus. To him, they were enchanting, with their ferocious power and terrifying winds, juxtaposed with a mystical and almost ethereal aura that is hard to articulate. They soon became the focus of his research. It was this fascination, nearly obsession really, that led this Japanese immigrant to the barren plains of North Dakota in the summer of 1957. On June 20th of that year, a large tornado devastated the northern portions of the city of Fargo. 12 people were killed, making it the deadliest in North Dakota's history. When Fujita arrived on scene, he found some 100 blocks of the city devastated by the twister, and thousands of people picking up the pieces that formerly made up their homes and businesses. It was these people Fujita was interested in. Teaming up with local meteorologists, he surveyed local residents, asking everyone for any picture of the tornado they may have captured, and for stories of their personal experiences with the storm. By the end of his time in the city, he had collected over 200 photos of the tornado, from a total of 53 different locations. Fujita spent countless hours poring over the photos, carefully analyzing the angle from which they were taken, the sequence in which they were taken, and the landmarks within the frame, to craft a map of the tornado's path. It was one of the most detailed tornado surveys conducted up to that point. Yet, perhaps the most important thing to come from the study was not this map, but rather what Fujita referred to as the first motion picture depicting the life of a tornado. While today it comes off as more of a slideshow, this collection of grainy pictures was revolutionary for its time, showing the tornado from birth until death. While making this film, Fujita coined several terms for the parts of the storm he was observing, terms such as wall cloud, collar cloud, and tail cloud that are still used today. Fujita complemented these findings with various crude hand-drawn animations of the tornado itself, based on the photos he reviewed, alongside strikingly detailed surface maps depicting the broader atmospheric setup. It took him 2 years to complete the project. As the 1960s rolled around, change was in the air, literally for Fujita. He found himself chartering airplanes to survey the immediate aftermath of tornadoes across the Midwest. From his high vantage point, he'd snap photos of the devastation below, taking note of the marks left in the soil by the twister's ferocious winds, and the way the debris was scattered. He observed fluctuations in intensity through the tornado's lifespan, and circular patterns throughout the path where debris had been piled up. Fujita theorized that these piles were left behind by low-pressure spots within the tornado, in other words, subvortices within the larger twister. This theory was derided by most others in the meteorological community. At conferences, it wasn't uncommon for Fujita to find himself in lengthy arguments with colleagues. They challenged him to show them photographic proof of the phenomenon, something that Fujita did not have. In response, he'd tell them, "Not to have seen something does not mean that such a thing does not exist."
It was these very same theories that brought Fujita much scorn amongst his peers at other institutions that soon brought him much praise and renown here at the University of Chicago. He soon became a full professor of meteorology and was elevated to the head of the Satellite and Mesometeorology Project. It was with this project where he soon began to publish much of his findings, avoiding the peer review process. He saw himself to be above peer review, which seems a little egotistical, but I suppose being the father of modern severe weather meteorology gives you a little bit of wiggle room.
The most sophisticated tornado research in the world is done here in this building on the campus of the University of Chicago. It's home base for Dr. Ted Fujita. Spring is also a hectic time here. Fujita spends most of it shuttling around the country in a Learjet chasing tornadoes and their aftermath. Fujita and his people have studied and documented thousands of twisters. The sheer volume of information he's accumulated over the last 24 years is incredible. Fujita has a full-time staff of 15 people to study tornadoes and severe weather in the United States, but only his own salary is paid for by the university. The rest Fujita must raise from the government. When Fujita's people aren't out chasing storms and twisters, they're often studying them on film, as they did with the Barthold footage on the Jordan tornadoes. Good films are extremely valuable because they make it possible to determine the speed and direction of winds inside the tornado.
Any tornado, it's very difficult to compute the wind speed because tornadoes swirl very fast. Therefore, even if we have several pictures taken by instamatic water camera, we can't compute the motion because we have to have a continuous, more or less, record of tornado swirling motion. Now, in this case, we try to use Charles' movie so that we can determine how fast this cloud was swirling.
If all else fails, one can always make his own tornado, as Greg Forbes is doing here. Dr. Fujita designed this machine about 5 years ago. The vapor comes from dry ice being placed in water. It's a tool for testing different theories under controlled conditions, and I suspect it's also kind of fun.
In 1971, the Fujita Scale debuted, introducing, for the first time, a scientific way to measure the intensity of tornadoes. On a 6-point scale, it began at the bottom with the weakest of tornadoes, the kind that throws around a few branches and may take a few shingles off your roof. These were assigned an F0 rating, with winds less than 73 miles per hour. And it ended at the top, the elusive F5. The most intense natural phenomena on Earth, the fingers of God. With winds above 261 miles per hour, these were the types of tornadoes that erased entire cities off the map. And in 1974, Fujita would get up close and personal with the aftermath of several such beasts. On April 3, 1974, the most intense tornado outbreak in recorded history would terrorize much of the eastern United States. From Alabama to Ohio, death would descend from the sky in the form of massive mile-wide twisters, violently demolishing town after town, leaving 319 people dead across 13 states and 1 Canadian province. Before the sun had even set, and while tornadoes were still ravaging the nation, Fujita was preparing Cessna crews to survey the devastation. Over the course of the next few days, Fujita would fly over 10,000 miles, analyzing the destruction in communities such as Ewan, Alabama, Brandenburg, Kentucky, and Xenia, Ohio. All the while, his legion of researchers descended upon the cities affected, collecting first-hand accounts from those who survived the storms. In the months following, Fujita would use his team's findings to compile the most detailed tornadic study ever conducted, culminating in the creation of a hand-drawn map depicting the paths of every twister documented that day, unheard of in that era. Something else they discovered during their study was footage confirming Fujita's multiple vortices hypothesis from years before. Collected from survivors in Ohio and Indiana, these videos provided Fujita's critics with the evidence they had been demanding. Now, they could finally see. The outbreak also served to popularize the Fujita Scale. Soon, Fujita's name was plastered all over TV screens across America. He delighted reporters with earnest love for weather, his confidence, and his simple way of explaining the extraordinary. While Fujita's professional career was reaching new heights, his personal life was in shambles. With so much time spent in the lab, he had a difficult time balancing family and work. To him, the study of tornadoes was everything. Family was secondary. He'd periodically take road trips with his wife and son, but outside of that, the relationship Fujita had with the boy was distant, and his marriage was often rocky. In 1968, he and his wife of 20 years divorced. He soon remarried, but work remained his number one priority. And things were about to get even busier.
This is NBC Nightly News, Tuesday, June 24th, with John Chancellor reporting from the NBC News Center in New York.
Good evening. More than 100 people were reported dead in a plane crash near New York's Kennedy Airport this afternoon. The plane was an Eastern Airlines 727 nearing the end of a nonstop flight from New Orleans.
On June 24, 1975, Eastern Airlines Flight 66 crashed during a storm on its approach to the runway at JFK International Airport in New York City. 113 people were dead. It was, at that point in time, the deadliest single aircraft disaster in United States history. Soon after the incident, Ted Fujita's phone rang. The NTSB wanted him to assist in finding out what caused the crash. In his research, Fujita identified what would later become known as downbursts, strong bursts of wind that swoop downwards from a storm before impacting the ground and fanning out in all directions. Not too unlike the nuclear explosions that Fujita had studied early on in his career. He theorized that the plane found itself within one, causing it to lose control. To counter future incidents, Fujita suggested the installation of additional sensors at the approach ends of runways, and new procedures for communicating the presence of downbursts to pilots. Like his previous theory of subvortices, however, Fujita found the vast majority of his peers questioning his hypothesis. It took the crashes of Pan Am Flight 759 and Delta Airlines Flight 191 and the deaths of 281 people before Fujita's theory was finally accepted and his recommendations widely implemented. It's likely that his discovery has saved hundreds, if not thousands of lives in the years since. On June 12, 1982, at the age of 68, Ted Fujita saw his first tornado. After dedicating his entire life to the study of them, spending countless hours poring over photos, videos, and accounts of their destruction, after sidelining his personal life for the sake of bettering his understanding of them, and after near endless battles with peers and colleagues who disagreed with his revolutionary approaches to their study, Mr. Tornado finally laid his eyes on one of the beasts. Those with him said he was as giddy as they'd ever seen him. They celebrated with drinks afterwards. In 1989, Fujita was honored with a medal by the French National Academy of Air and Space. For his trip to Europe to accept his award, the Academy provided him with a complimentary ride aboard a Concorde jet. Fujita later stated that as he rode in the plane's cockpit, staring down at the shining Atlantic below, he thought back to his flight to America. In the nearly 40 years since then, he had advanced the world's knowledge of weather to levels never before seen, and become revered internationally for his work. In 1990, Fujita was forced to retire from his position at the University of Chicago. The university required all faculty to retire at the age of 70. His analytical mind never stopped looking for things to study, though. By 1995, he had begun a collection of diary-like entries, documenting his rapidly declining health. He was diagnosed with diabetes and prescribed medicine to deal with his confounding ailments, but it did little to help him. His body was soon racked by intense pains. In an effort to try to better understand what was happening to him, Fujita created a pain scale to document his worsening aches. But the doctors were unable to ease his discomfort.
Dr. Tetsuya Theodore Fujita passed away on November 19, 1998 at his Chicago home a few blocks away from here, at the age of 78. In the months following his passing, tributes from around the weather community began to pour in, including from Stormtrack magazine, who ran a special edition bearing his name, and the American Meteorological Society, who held a symposium honoring his decades of contributions to the field. Fujita's impact continued to live on over the next few years through the many people who studied and worked under him, including Dr. Gregory Forbes, who was there in 1974 surveying the aftermath of the Super Outbreak with Fujita, who in the early 2000s became the face of the Weather Channel's severe weather coverage, and Dr. Roger Wakamoto, who continued to push the field forward in the land of academia. Additionally, many researchers worked to refine Fujita's namesake scale, leading to the release of the enhanced Fujita Scale in 2007, to make sure that this scale continued to be relevant in the ever-changing meteorological field that we know today. In 2020, PBS released a documentary on Fujita titled Mr. Tornado. It includes clips from various different interviews with people who knew Fujita firsthand, and was cited heavily when researching the script for this video. It'll be linked in the description if you want to watch it at a later time. In the over 2 decades since Fujita's death, the meteorological field has continued to move forward in no small part due to the contributions that he made in the late 20th century. However, the field has yet to find someone as publicly visible or as revolutionary as Fujita was.
Dr. Ted Fujita cheated death. He traveled across the sea and found himself in a foreign land often hostile to Japanese immigrants. He fought for years to be respected by his peers, who so often dismissed him as too young, too out there, too inexperienced. When he found himself in a strange city with nothing but a pencil and a desk, he looked to the sky and found his salvation in the beauty of nature. For him, like for many of us similarly affected by the weather bug, it was in the atmosphere where he found proof of a real magic on Earth, a magic that conjured up deadly beasts out of thin air, strong enough to destroy entire cities and kill hundreds, yet all the same mesmerizing and mystifying. He respected the beauty and ferocity of these storms and dedicated his life to understanding them as best as he could, and by the end of it, he understood them better than anyone else on the planet. His research saved thousands of lives and pushed the boundaries of what was thought possible in the field of meteorology. He died with so many unanswered questions left in his head, yet through his hard work and dedication, he laid the groundwork for a new generation of meteorologists to make new strides, think outside of the box, and revolutionize the field. In the name of science, in the name of Mr. Tornado. This has been Overcast. Thank you for watching.